Hi, everyone, and welcome to Quests by Community. And today, our special guest is James Fowler, and they are a Doctor of Philosophy candidate within the University of Queensland School of Public Health. His work involves the use of mixed methodologies and community based participatory research to address the mental health needs of communities, with a specialist focus on LGBTIQ plus issues. His PhD focused on the co-design and implementation considerations of a web-based acceptance and commitment therapy ACT program for the LGBTIQ community. In recognition of his work within our LGBTIQ plus community, he was awarded the University of Queensland Ally Award in 2022. James is also involved in a number of variety of projects exploring gender-affirming hormone therapy, syphilis in pregnancy, and access to PrEP in young people, mental health of university students, digital interventions for neurodiverse students, and psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. Wow. Outside of research, James frequently provides lectures in public health courses, and he has previously course coordinated and lectured subjects in the School of Psychology. James is also the co-chair of the Higher Degree Research Committee and is also involved in other committees throughout University of Queensland. He is also importantly a member of the Queensland Government Advisory Panel on LGBTI plus issues, and he is working to develop Queensland's LGBTIQA plus strategy. And his incredible thesis, which we're going to unpack today, is entitled A Mixed Methods Evaluation on the Effectiveness and Implementation Considerations for a Digital Self-Guided Acceptance and Commitment Therapy ACT program for LGBTIQ individuals. Welcome, James. Oh my God, all that.
Thank you so much. You make me sound like a very busy person, Ricky.
James, as we start to get to know you, tell us a little bit about how you got into research.
Ever since I was 6, 7, the day I learned what mental health was, I was passionate and just determined to do everything I could to learn more about it, to help other people. And as I kind of got older and realized I was a part of this community, and I saw the impact of discrimination, of internal struggle that it can have on mental health. It was just kind of the most important and clear pathway for me in my career, whichever way I went. Originally, I wanted to be a psychologist, but I realized I think my strengths lied more within the area of research and working on a larger scale with community to work together to understand what we can do better for mental health.
What is ACT?
So, acceptance and commitment therapy is a therapeutic approach which is designed to help people learn what their values are, what's important to them in life, identify their strengths, and take action to kind of do things in their life to live a life that aligns with those values. And a part of that comes with this idea of acceptance, of that sometimes life can be really hard. Sometimes you can be in really tricky situations. And different to other forms of psychotherapy, what we do in ACT is say, I can't control that. And so I'm going to spend all my time and my inward focus in looking after myself and trying to follow my values to get out of this situation.
And what made you decide to focus your research, particularly with the LGBTIQ communities?
I think for me, it was this sense that I knew that this community needed more research. It needed people within community to help lead that research. And it has just been the most rewarding and amazing. I can't put into words what a joy it's been to work with my community and to start to see some of the impacts of my work within this space. I sometimes think about it as low-hanging fruit because lots of my research areas are kind of based in places where I've woken up and seen that there's a problem, and I can't rest until we do everything we can to fix the problems.
As we know, in the recent years, there's quite a forward leaning towards digital health and accessing digital means of therapy and guidance. How are you going to impart or position that within your particular research?
So for me, I think digital health is one avenue that we can go down to provide people with some form of psychological support. And it's been a real central area in my body of research for two reasons. And the first one is that same thing I was just speaking to, the idea of providing people with some form of support, but also that we don't know very much about how we can use this stuff in a really safe way with people in the LGBTQIA plus community, but other areas I'm involved with too, such as people who are neurodivergent. And digital health, I think, will always stay a really central part of the research that I do, alongside integrating that lived experience and that community voice to guide the best and most safe way to use it.
And you mentioned those on the spectrum. Is there a reason why you decided to incorporate those aspects?
I think when we look at research, we often do see that there is a large overlap between people who are neurodivergent and people who identify as part of the community. I think for me, as well as a neurodivergent person, these are two very important aspects of my life. And I see firsthand in the people around me, within myself, the way that these aspects can influence what I need to feel safe in mental health situations, and in particular in a digital mental health situation. So it was perhaps a no-brainer for me that eventually I would be exploring both these areas and bringing them together in my research.
How are you going to go about recruiting people for your project?
Recruitment can be a little bit challenging at the moment. We're seeing a large, I guess, something we haven't seen before in communities, both rejecting research, which is very understandable, but also people who are not actually a part of these communities joining this research quite fraudulently to get the research incentives that can be a part of it. So what we have done historically in my research and those of my colleagues is that we work with community partners to access people who, for example, might use their service or follow their feeds and integrate it through that way, as well as connecting with amazing people in community who are happy to share on our research in those capacities. I think it's really important to build trust in research between the research and the research team and their institution and the individual who is being invited to participate in research. And I think lots of people undervalue that role of trust in research. But I think the more that we can promote and cultivate that within communities, the stronger our combined body of research can be, both for me as a researcher and me as a member of the community.
And James, tell us a little bit about the sample that you're looking for. Are you looking for people who live in certain areas, or are you looking for a cross section across Australia and ages?
So, for my research, it's anyone who identifies as a part of the LGBTQIA plus community, whatever label aspects, if it relates to you, then we want you in our research. Anyone age 16 and above. And it'll be my mission to try and get voices from people all around the country. We know that people by different states, by different towns, sometimes by different suburbs, will have a different experience of what it means to be an LGBTQIA plus person living in Australia, and the challenges and the supporters that come alongside that. So it's really important as part of our community-based participatory research and getting community involved that we don't focus on just one aspect of community, really trying to get everyone involved as much as we can.
For those who are listening who are wondering, well, where does this research go in terms of who approves it and the ethics? Can you give us a little bit of a understanding of the process that the ethical frameworks that have been applied to it?
So we are approved by the University of Queensland to deliver this research. That involves an intensive, I think it took us about 6 months in total to get the ethics approved. The University of Queensland are particularly rigorous around ensuring that we are doing things to protect the safety of our participants, both their identity and the data we collect, but their well-being as we go through this research. So that's what we've done as a first level. But something to flag more broadly about a lot of research that you might see is that to be shared through community organizations, there will often be an internal review board as well, who will add an extra lens onto that research to make sure that it is both ethical, safe, and is for the value of our community as well.
And going on from that, James, why do you think it's important to have people like yourself undertaking research with queer communities?
I think the for me as a queer person, and that's a term that I use to identify for myself, there are challenges and experiences that someone who isn't a part of our community wouldn't understand and perhaps wouldn't think of when they're discussing mental health and the things that can come with it. It's really important that we help communities respond to their own problems and kind of have authority over the interventions and the research that happens to help improve the success of those communities. So I think having people like myself and many wonderful peers who I also have in research who are a part of this community to be upskilled, to be able to harness the experience they've got to inform the research, I think it's just so valuable. But I also want to really flag the value that you get from when you work with both insiders to the community and outsiders. I think the blend of both is the perfect mix to make sure that methodologically speaking, we're doing the absolute best research that we can do.
For me, the next sort of question to follow on is if people are interested to become involved in your research, what's involved in terms of the commitment?
The commitment is quite a big ask of people, and I will be very open and upfront about that. But I hope that the long term impact of the work that I'm doing will be some form of motivator to engage with the research. So, as you join, you'll be asked to complete a psychological survey with a bunch of different measures around mental health. That will take about 20 to 25 minutes, a maximum of 30 for most people. Then you'll be randomly allocated to two different groups. And in one of those groups, you can straight away participate with the program itself. And the other group will be asked to wait 4 weeks and then recomplete those surveys and then participate in the program. The program, as we spoke about before, is developed by, using an acceptance and commitment therapy framework. And it's 4 modules that you can complete kind of in any frequency you like. So we generally recommend once per week for 4 weeks. If you love it a lot, you can complete it all in one go if that's the way that your brain likes to work. And each of those modules can be about 45 minutes. Then at the end of it, you'll be asked to recomplete some of those psychological surveys to help with our data collection. During that journey, you'll be asked to provide feedback on the moment about what you felt about the modules that you completed, and in particular, the ways that it could be improved to kind of improve the way that it meets the needs of our community, makes people in our community feel safe and included, as well as anything else broadly that you would like to see in the intervention. And then a small group of people will be invited to complete interviews with myself about both the intervention that they completed or partially completed. We do see a range of participation, but also broadly what they want to see from mental health interventions to inform this research, but research, for the next 10 years in terms of what people want to see.
And that's just such an incredible, really valuable sort of research I can see that's going to really benefit the whole community. And one of the other questions, I guess, or to put to you is for those in the community who may not feel safe to disclose that they are LGBTIQA plus, could they do this perhaps in a library or somewhere to log on to one of the computers?
Definitely. So any desktop computer or laptop can be used. I'll flag as well that what we've done with this program and this research is we're giving what we call the blank slate version of the program. So the content as it stands is intentionally very generic, and that's because we want members of the community to rip the program to shreds and kind of recolor it in with everything they need to see from something that is quite community specific. So, aside from the name of the program and the landing page, which has some community based imagery, the vast majority of what you'll complete will look like any other survey or any other mental health intervention that isn't targeted to any specific form of identity.
I want to now ask you a little bit about your other areas of research, and I guess one of them that really sort of got me really excited was your work in affirming, hormone therapy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, I was invited, gosh, too many years ago now, I think about 3 years, to be involved with a wonderful project being ran at the University of Queensland. And what that research was doing was looking at the drug cyproterone acetate, which is often used in feminizing hormone therapy, and to determine what is the lowest dose that we can give someone to bring about the changes that they would like to see, but is the lowest dose possible, because the drug itself can be quite potent and it can potentially, and most often rarely, lead to some negative side effects. So our journey there was to understand what we could do to make the process a bit safer for people as they went through it. And we really wanted to understand, the changes that people go through in this, fabulous experience. And so we built into it some research that chatted with people who were participating in the broader program to understand what are your experiences going through hormone therapy. And our lens was taking the learnings from that to identify where we can change systems in Australia to better support people.
Mm. And I guess someone for like myself who was older when they went on to hormones, was there any? Did you find any difference between age and the amount that we could take, or is it more on the individual biological basis?
So it's a tentative yes that we did see in some of the quantitative data that being younger meant that you could go to a lower dosage. However, we weren't able to substantiate that with any kind of significance testing. So I definitely can't say an authoritative yes or no on that, but it was a trend that we saw in some of the descriptions of the data.
Now, I want to jump to other bit of research because we've had quite a bit of interest in it. Is your work in access to prep for young people? Can you tell us a little bit about that work?
It has been some of the most rewarding work I've ever been involved with, to be perfectly honest with you. Again, with the fabulous team at the University of Queensland and led by Associate Professor Judith Dean. The work is about understanding young people's barriers to accessing PrEP. The funding meant that it was specifically located in Queensland. And we have both a survey and an interview that we can complete to explore what those barriers are. I guess a bit of context to it is that I'm going to get fact check on my dating here, but I believe it was 2021. The PBS laws changed, so people under the age of 18 could access PrEP with financial support. And not much research has actually been done in understanding those people specifically as to what their experiences are accessing PrEP. And so we're trying to help fill that gap.
Mm. So much great research that you're undertaking, and we're so really blessed to have an incredible researcher like yourself in that space. And I've also that noticed that you're part of the Queensland's Government Advisory Panel on LGBTIQA plus issues. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that and what sort of areas that your advisory group is focusing on?
I got involved with it quite randomly, to be honest with you, Ricky. I saw an online post inviting people to participate, and I submitted an application, and that's how I got through. So there's nothing too magnificent in that story there. The group itself is really focused on building Queensland's LGBTI strategy. and really wanting to learn from us in the room, but also the community living in Queensland about what are our priorities and what can the government do to help form an action plan, and particularly a plan that would not necessarily be impacted by who was in Parliament at the time, a concrete mission to improve the lives of queer people living in Queensland or LGBTQIA plus people living in Queensland.
Why is it important to have an LGBTIQ advisory group in all the states, as opposed to just having a one national space?
I think it touches on what I was talking about before, that the experience of what it means to be LGBTQIA plus differs across suburbs sometimes. And so to have one national body would mean that many voices would be missed. And we need to make sure that we are doing things to capture those voices. I'm sure there is a relationship between having your voice heard and your mental health, but both in turn not being able to share your voice and having a channel and mental health impacts too. So if we only had one national body, I feel like we would be missing people, and there would be an impact and a consequence to missing some of those people too. But that's also not to suggest that there aren't still people being missed. I think that's why we need to continually work on the big levels, on the levels in between, and really on the ground in communities as well, to provide people that opportunity to share.
And with the Queensland space, how many members are there that form the panel advisory?
From my memory, and I'm a very bad counter, Ricky, so I think it's about between 10 to 15 people from various backgrounds and organizations and roles across Queensland.
So it's very representative of our community.
I'd like to think so. I think it can be hard sometimes to have, I think when we just think about how diverse our community is, representative, yes, I like to think so, but I just always like to flag and not lose sight of the fact that there will still be people in that room who aren't represented. And I think that's just important to keep in the front of our minds as well.
What do you want to do once you've completed your PhD?
Take a long holiday to start off with, and then I really want to stay working with my community. That is my dream. Um, I imagine that will end up being a research role at the university. Which university, I don't know, but that's something I would really like to be able to stay in. Research for me is very much my home and where I feel I can contribute the most. I do lecture and teach as well, and have really loved the chance to integrate curriculum about lived experience, about identity into different undergraduate courses across the University of Queensland as well. So anything that really keeps me in this role where I can use my lived experience and my research skills, I like to think sometimes, depending how my confidence is that day, to inform people and teach people, but also amplify the voices of our community.
My passion areas is, of course, the participation of lived experience in helping shape policies in health. How important is having people representative from the community to be involved in research at universities to help uh, students learn about working more effectively, understanding people's intersectionality?
I think it's really essential. And the reason I think it's so important is that we can talk about intersectionality. We can give people a base level understanding of what it means to have multiple intersecting experiences that influence whether or not you could go see a GP comfortably. But I think having that come from a member of the community gives a level of humanization to it, that yes, we're intersectional human beings, but also we're people. And I think it allows people to more comfortably engage with different communities and to, I suppose, I suppose sometimes not be so afraid of connecting with people in other communities as well. So I think it's the most important thing that we can do is to really humanize the experience when we're teaching, and that's through lived experience and actually getting people who belong in those communities to talk about what it means to them.
When you're doing your research, are you part of like an LGBTI community of researchers where you can come and share ideas and give each other support in that space?
No, so the work I do at the University of Queensland is quite isolated from other queer researchers, kind of based on where I am at the university. So that can be quite challenging sometimes, but I'm also lucky to work with a variety of colleagues from across, the university, but also Australia, really, who are a source of both debriefing about research, but also talking about research and sharing our ideas.
Do you feel that that's one gap currently in research spaces that really could be better developed to support emerging scholars and people embarking in the early careers, to have people from the queer community supporting each other and mentoring?
I think so. And I think there are definitely outlets where this does happen. So, for example, I know Out for Australia has a really fantastic mentor program. Um, so I do think it does happen, but I think a nice formalized structure would be good in the research context. I think research is one of those things where, particularly when you're focusing on your community, it can be a really hard area to be in, is the word I describe, because sometimes I will spend my day reading statistics and lived experience of people who've had really, really tough lives, and taking that home with you and having that be your job requires debriefing. And I'm lucky to have in my personal life the most amazing support network to facilitate that. But I think a formalized structure would be really good. I think as well, in terms of the mentoring of new students, that's been the most rewarding thing out of everything I've done. Is I've had the chance to work with, I think, about 6 students now who've come through different undergraduate programs, but also have listened to my lectures and said, "Hey, I'd love to learn more about what I can do to help in my community." And that's just been the most fabulous thing to do, to teach someone in our community about what we can do and how we do it, and give them the skills to go help someone else, to go train someone else if that was where they ended up one day. So
And as we almost come to the end, James, I want to know a little bit more about you. What do you do to unwind and do in your spare time to relax?
I need to do more is probably the most honest version of that answer, Ricky. I think that I have the most incredible friends and family. And the way that I unwind is often just sitting next to them, doing my own thing, but receiving their love just through silence, which might not sound like the most positive thing, but being autistic, the idea of parallel play is just the most beautiful thing for me. So that is my outlet. But myself and my therapist both agree potentially I need to develop some more.
James Fowler, it's been an absolute honour and pleasure having you on Quest by Community on Channel 31. We love listening to you, and we hope to have you come back and tell us about your journeys. Wishing you all the best in your research. And anyone who's interested, please reach out, because this is such an important area. It's very positive in terms of well-being, and it's going to make a huge difference in the community. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Thank you so much. It's always so wonderful to speak with you, Ricky, and to have this platform to share what I do. And one thing I would love just to add to that is that if anyone in the community wants to learn more about research in general and what's happening, then I really invite any questions to come through to me, because I'd love to chat with anyone who wants to just learn more about the research that's happening in Australia.